Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this latest version of WIRE's webinar series. Very happy today to have with us Jignasa Gadani, who is the Director of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's Office of Energy Policy and Innovation. So welcome, Jignasa. We're really pleased to have you here. I just want to mention to the participants as we get started that you will have the opportunity to submit questions throughout the course of this webinar. So as they occur to you, please feel free to go ahead and submit them in through the question function, which is on your webinar control panel. Just hit the question function and type it in, and then I will try to work those questions in to Jignasa as we start walking through some of our discussion with her today. But once again, Jignasa, thank you very much for being here with us at WIRES. Folks are really interested and anxious to hear more about you and about the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation. We'll call it OPI for shorthand, right? And I think one of the things that would be helpful for us right off the bat is just for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your professional background, and how you wound up at FERC. So I'll turn it over to you, and we're anxious to hear a little bit about you and your background.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you to everyone in your audience that joined today. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be invited. I will start with the caveat that the comments I make will be my own when we talk about some of the substantive issues. But again, thank you for having me. So I have been with the Commission 21 years now, which I'm not sure how that happened, but it's been a great place to work and has always challenged me, so I've enjoyed being there. I am a lawyer by training. I joined FERC in 2001, pretty much right out of law school. I was very interested in the energy and environmental issues. I knew what Federal Energy Regulatory Commission was. I had worked at the Illinois Commerce Commission through law school and was very interested in these issues. So was hired in the General Counsel's office, really enjoyed my time there. Then I got to work with Commissioner Moeller for a few years, which was just a great experience. Again, you got to see the various parts of the Commission working together to advance some of the issues that were very important to the Commissioner. After that, I headed on to the technical office, the Office of Energy Market Regulation, headed up their East Division, focused on Eastern market issues, as well as the vertically integrated utility issues that covered that expanse. After that, I switched over to the policy office, where I was the deputy director for a few years, and then since then became the director. So as you can tell, I've worked in several parts of the Commission, and I think it's really helped me throughout the years fit the pieces together and also think about what are the policy areas that need to be tracked and that the Commission should be thinking about, so that when the chairman and the Commission is looking to the policy office, I can add to that background and also provide leadership to the OPI team on what we should be focusing on. So Larry, that's the quick background on the work I've done and my role at the Commission over the last few years.
Well, great. Thanks, Jignasa. I know from my own personal experience working with you, you've had a number of different experiences over the years, and it's, I think, been helpful in terms of leading into your role now as the director of a major program office at the Commission. And I thought maybe it would also be helpful for folks who aren't as familiar with the office of OPI to hear from you a little bit about the background for the office. What does it do? What is its area of responsibility within the Commission? In terms of some of the key program offices within FERC, I know OPI tends to work very closely with the General Counsel's office, also with the Office of Energy Market Regulation. But between all the three of them, OPI is sort of the baby still of the group in a sense, even though it's been around for a while. Can you talk a little bit about to the extent, I know this extends for your time as leadership, but the history of the office and what does it do?
Happy to do that, Larry. And I appreciate the opportunity to tell people a little bit more about the office. So the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation in its form has been around for over 10 years now. However, my understanding is that FERC has always had some sort of policy group function office over the years, but this current form was established under Chairman Wellinghoff. At the time he established it, there were several initiatives in certain policy areas that he was very interested in, and did ask and did set up this office to make sure that those issues were being addressed. Some of those issues included transmission related issues to make the transmission space a little more competitive. There was also an interest in certain resources that were new to the market, demand response, other new technologies, and looking for ways to remove barriers for those resources to participate in the market, anticipating that there were these new resources that could bring value to customers, as well as anticipating the renewable energy growth and its integration into the markets and the infrastructure. So that since then, OP, my understanding was about 40 or so people. Right now it's 80 people, so it's almost doubled in size, and continues to do the work. For the policy office, as I've headed it up and as I was a deputy, the way I explain what we do is essentially the policy office is looking out. They're identifying trends. They're looking at what issues are emerging that will intersect with the issues that FERC will have to deal with, and then think about, work through those issues and anticipate where the commission might need to take action. But that is one piece. The other piece is looking back, taking a look at the policies the commission has been implementing and seeing how they're working, and if change is necessary, and what those changes, how to implement those changes. So that's how I've been approaching this job. And with that role in mind, our staff has a range of experience. We have engineers, economists, policy analysts, lawyers, all of those skill sets, data analysts. And what we do is we use those skill sets to keep an eye on these issues, think through those issues. We do some internal analysis, we'll do papers. We've issued a few white papers that have initiated some interesting conversations, things like that. We'll also work on rulemakings. We're not the only office that works on rulemakings. There are some areas that we lead rulemakings, but other offices do have lead roles. For example, reliability rules are led by the Office of Electric Reliability. So just to be clear, we don't lead all rules, but we are working on some significant rulemakings. We have staff that have the opportunity to observe trends across markets, across regions, or we have staff that can really dig into an issue. So that's where we complement the work of the other offices at the commission. Larry, you mentioned we work very closely with the General Counsel's office. Rulemakings are one of those efforts where we work closely with that office, with Office of Energy Market Regulation, that has a range of experience and regional expertise on issues that we're thinking about. We also have been working with Office of Electric Reliability. As you know, market and reliability issues over the last few years have continued to intersect. So we work very closely with them. We occasionally work with the Office of Enforcement as well. So these are some of our interactions. Some of the questions I get is, well, who's doing what? There seems to be a lot of you. We tend to work in a team. So depending on the issue, depending on the case, depending on the proceeding, we try to bring different expertise to the table. So we're complementing and not duplicating expertise. And so there may be a capacity market issue where OEMR has really good knowledge of the market and the depth of the issues. We may be bringing expertise to it that talks about other markets and how they interact. So that's an example of complementary work we do. And rulemakings, we will lead an initiative, look for the way forward. OEMR, again, will bring some great regional expertise. The lawyers will help us explain why we need to take action and help us ground that in the jurisdiction we have. So those are the interactions. Larry, if it's okay, I'll just quickly talk about the organization. I know I've gone on a long, but
No, please,
So
actually, that's where I was going to go next, is how you said there are like 80 employees or so roughly within OPI. How are they organized? How are they broken up into different sections within the overall office?
sure. So we currently have 3 divisions in OP. That's the Division of Economic Analysis and Technical Analysis. That division has been here since the start of OP. Those folks have a range of expertise. They have been taking lead on some of the technical analysis we've needed to do. If people have been around since the price formation efforts, there were several analysis that staff had done using the order number 760 data. This is data we collect from our TO's ISOs that they were able to use to dig into certain market issues and look for market price formation improvements in markets. So that's some work they've done. They also host an annual software conference, for example, where essentially a lot of innovative thinking is brought to that table. And as a result of that conversation, sometimes we'll have some ideas that we'll pursue. Some of them include topics like managing line ratings, where we issued that rulemaking. I think it's been over a year now because we're doing compliance filings. So that's an effort. So that's the type of work, but there is a range of expertise in that division. They also have led other rulemakings. The most current rulemaking they're leading is the interconnection rulemaking. That is following up on some of the work they had done in Order 845, and I can talk more about that. The other division we have is the Division of Policy Development. This is a division that has been focused on capacity market issues, transmission development issues. They worked on Order 1000. They continue to work on the latest transmission effort that we've got going on. Again, lots of skill sets. They have certain areas they focus on, transmission being one of them. The third division is the Division of Energy Markets and Assessment. They joined our office. They're the most recent addition about 3 years ago, and they have been a great addition to the policy office. They are looking at the markets. They're assessing how market policy changes are being implemented, how the markets are performing. They provide a great service where every year they put out multiple reports to the public, the State of the Markets report that does a review of the prior year, including generation trends, transmission trends. They're also talking about the rulemakings that the Commission has initiated or implemented, the progress of those. So they do a really good job. It's a great document that provides you a summary of what the Commission has been doing over the past year. They also do seasonal assessments that give the Commission and the public a preview of what we're anticipating and how those seasons will go in the utility industry. So those are the different work products. Working together as an office, we are also then able to identify policy trends, anticipate what should be done, and then also report out on what we've done and how it's working. So that's an intro on the various 3 divisions. 3 divisions are led by Michael McLaughlin, leads DEDA, Chris Young leads DPD, and Mary Wiersbicki leads DEMA. So if ever someone's looking for a contact, those are great people to know. Thanks.
Great, and as I recall, you have an organization chart, I think, on the web page where people can look at that and kind of figure out where those folks are as well. And then I also wanted to just ask and confirm, you talked about different reports that and white papers that get put out by the office. Are those available to the public, like through the website? Are they on OPI's webpage? Where would people find those if they were trying to track them down? Do you know?
Definitely. So if there are papers we've issued that are associated with technical conferences or rulemaking proceedings, those will be in the docket, and you can usually do a quick word search to find them. There are also the assessments in the State of the Markets report. Those are easily accessible on FERC's website. OEA does a great job, Office of External Affairs does a great job of putting out news releases or having a great table of contents that has the links to those reports.
Good, great, thank you very much. So, to me, what's interesting about an office like yours, particularly when it has the word policy involved in it, people's ears pick up immediately. and obviously, ultimately, the commission is the one responsible for setting what the policies are for FERC. But can you talk a little bit about how your office interacts with or advises the commissioners as they're trying to make decisions related to policy? How does that interaction take place?
Sure, happy to talk about that. I think some of it does depend on what the role is for the policy office that the chairman and the commission envision. There have been chairmen that are very active and have their thoughts and ideas on what policy initiatives they want to advance. So they'll reach out and they'll have a conversation with me and my other peers about here's the issues I'd like to do more work. I've found over the years that several of the issues identified by the chairman have been issues that OP has already been thinking about or has done some work, but the time hasn't been right. So storage is one of those. Years ago, storage was always very interesting. OP staff had been thinking about it, doing papers, working through it. When Chairman Bay became chairman, he was very interested in that topic, and we got going. We did outreach, got data from RTOs, ISOs, looked at the markets, and then looked for ways to make sure that we were removing barriers for that technology to participate in the markets, in the organized markets. So that's one aspect. I mentioned the price formation, where staff had done some technical analysis, and they were had good conversations with the chairperson and the commission, say here's opportunities to improve the market's performance, and get going on those. So those are the different types of interactions. The latest set of issues that the commission and the chairman are focused on include the infrastructure issues like transmission and interconnection, as well as taking a look at the existing markets to see if the markets are anticipating and considering changes in light of the change in resource mix. And those are the conversations that we've had with the chairman and the commissioners. Some of these things were things we were already thinking about, so it was a nice way to interact with the commission and be able to say, yes, we're working on this, here's how we can advance this, here's how we can pull in stakeholders and improve our learning of this issue, and also think about ways to make changes. Outreach is a big part of the policy office. I should have mentioned that earlier. Before an item is pending before us, usually OP is able to talk to people, visit people, be at conferences, and learn of issues as they're emerging, so that we are able to say, yeah, that's the next issue, let's start thinking about it. Order 2222, distributed energy resources, I'd say was one of those. We have been observing those trends in the two shores, east and west. California was doing a lot of work, and New York ISO was doing a lot of work, and that led to some very good conversations and the development of that rulemaking. So those are the ways we interact with the chairman and commissioners.
Great, thank you. Just in looking at you started to talk a little bit more substantively about some of the specific issues that OP gets involved in. I want to kind of explore that a little bit more if we can. And looking at the website, the description of the office and the areas that the office tends to work in, it looks like a lot of it is oriented towards the markets issues, it seems like. Is that accurate still in terms of the focus of the work of the office? Is it more diverse than that? What's kind of the breakdown in terms of how much time or how much resources are devoted towards market issues versus things like transmission, planning, or other areas? You mentioned a few others as well.
That's a good question. I think this goes back to my answer to your earlier question. A lot of what OP spends time on is after talking to the chairman and determining the direction. So, for instance, Chairman Glick, along with several of his colleagues, is very interested in looking at transmission and interconnection issues. He's been out there saying the resource mix is changing. There's a lot of things that are driving the need for transmission, but there's a recognition that transmission has to be built out efficiently. You have to manage the cost of transmission But the way it has been built in a piecemeal fashion, there is a concern that that may not be the most efficient way to build transmission. And so those initiatives have been ones that we've spent a fair bit of time since the chairman became chairman working on those issues. So I'd say quite a few of our staff are working on those, as well as the companion interconnection effort. Interconnection, since 2003, then we had Order 845. In 845, we made some changes. We got a chance to relook at those changes and say, wait, there's some more progress that needs to be made, given the queue backlogs, given the concerns we've heard on both sides, on the interconnection side, saying costs too much. I don't know, it's not clear to me where it makes sense to put my project. I get information too late to make good cost-effective decisions on the transmission side, worried about reliability concerns, also worried about speculative projects that clog up the queue. So taking all of those issues into account, we have a fair number of staff also working on those efforts. We do have people working on markets as well. And this is what I had mentioned earlier, is there is the changing resource mix, and knowing that, and we've been observing that for various years, we had been doing some thinking on those issues. The Commission had several technical conferences last year that explored. At that time, the focus had been more on the energy ancillary services markets to see if rule changes needed to be made. But after we issued our order direction reports a few months ago to the RTOs, ISOs, the Commission also asked questions about capacity markets in those efforts to say, are the markets delivering the resource we need in the time we need for performance to make sure that the reliability of the system continues to be maintained? So those are, I'd say, at this point, I'd say we're almost 50-50 on those infrastructure and market issues, but that may shift depending on what is the bigger issue at any given time. I also do want to say that for our one of our divisions, they have deep expertise in natural gas issues. So we also help out on natural gas issues. I should have mentioned that earlier. It's not just electric issues, it's also natural gas issues. That division also has relationships with market monitors so that we stay in touch and are regularly corresponding with them so that we are understanding how the markets are working and what the results are that the markets are delivering, and if there are opportunities to improve them.
Great. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about a couple of particular areas, but that I'm really focused more on the generic proceedings. I don't want to dig into anything specific in terms of proceedings. But actually, I do want to ask, you did talk a little bit about the OPI's role on technical conferences and rulemakings, but I assume OPI also gets involved in specific proceedings or specific case matters as well, depending on what those issues are. But I just want to ask you about that and get a little bit better idea of how you fit in with those types of matters too.
Sure, yes. We definitely work on generic proceedings, but we do also have staff that work on major cases. We essentially have established over the years a process where OPI staff monitor the incoming cases and identify ones that have policy issues. So before we started working on the interconnection rulemaking, we had several staff that had been working on interconnection issues and identifying which issues seemed to keep coming up or which issues you were seeing in all the regions. And as a result of that foundation and that understanding, that has been helpful when we've turned to the rulemaking and worked on that. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we try very hard to complement the other team members, so we're not repeating or rehashing the same things other people are working on, but instead bringing a set of skills that can help the team. FERC is very team oriented, so we have teams that work on different matters, but we hope that everyone's bringing a different perspective to make sure that the proceeding, all the issues in the proceeding are thoroughly vetted, discussed, including policy issues for the Commission's consideration.
Well, the Commission's certainly gone through a pretty extended and active period on issues that are of interest to WIRES and its members. which is on the transmission front, whether it's been technical conferences or ANOPR, NOPRs. There's a lot of activity going on right now. We just got through the period of submitting reply comments on the NOPR focused on regional transmission planning and cost allocation. So all of that material is there before the commission now. OPI, I believe, is the lead office on that item. Where does it go from here? What's the process in terms of, now that you've got all that material before you, do you have any sense of a time frame on it? What are the next steps?
So I can't talk about time frame, but I can talk about next steps, which is pretty much for any rulemaking proceeding. Once commission staff has received all the comments, staff reads through them, identifies the issues, sees how the questions that the commission put out in the NOPR or the proposals the commission put out in the NOPR, how they're addressed and what the feedback on that is. And then the next step is understanding those issues, identifying potential ways forward on those issues, and recommend something to the commission for their consideration so that they have and can provide the determinations for the final action the commission is going to take. Typically with the notice proposed rule, the next step is a final rule, but depending on what we've gotten, what the issues are of interest, there may be additional things that need to be considered. I think, Larry, you know, often entities will reach out to staff and meet with them to talk through the issues that are most relevant to them, or ones that they want to offer alternate ideas or thoughts, or want to dig into some of those issues. So staff has been busy in those kinds of outreach discussions as well. What's most helpful for us is at this stage what people put in their comments so that it's in the record for the commission to consider to make a decision on. So those are the next steps towards final action.
Yeah, that's right. It's helpful and important to keep in mind that that's one of the advantages of typically of a rulemaking proceeding is it doesn't have the same restrictions on communicating with either the staff or the commissioners like you would with a contested proceeding. So those, as we call them, ex parte concerns, don't attach typically. So there are opportunities for people to engage. So I think it's important for people to be aware of that and keep it in mind with respect to those types of proceedings. But another item I wanted to ask you a little bit about is back in the ANOPR the commission put out some time ago, there were some issues that it kind of teed up for consideration related to, I'll just call it cost management, or possibly oversight type questions. That seems to have been carved out now, and FERC has a technical conference on October 6th. It looks like it's geared towards trying to consider some of those issues. As we look ahead to that tech conference, what's OPI's role in connection with the technical conference, and can you tell me what in terms of your office's perspective, do you anticipate from that conference? What are you looking to see come out of that conference?
Thanks, Larry. Yes, that conference is scheduled for next Thursday. It's an all-day conference. I think, as you pointed out in the ANOPR, there was some discussion tied to those issues. I think, as I was mentioning earlier, there appears to be a need to build out the transmission infrastructure, but there is a concern about building out the transmission infrastructure and the cost associated with that and the impact on ratepayers. In light of that, there has been an interest in examining those costs to make sure that the rates are just and reasonable. So this is a topic of interest for several commissioners as well as the chairman. That is why we wanted to get into those issues, and those are being discussed next week. It's a pretty full day with a lot of detail that we're going to be going through. So if anyone's interested, recommend listening to that. We have excellent panelists speaking to it. That conference right now is being led by the Office of Energy Market Regulation. They have been setting it up. We've been working closely with them. As you mentioned, Larry, we're working on related transmission issues. This idea was part of the NOPR, and so after that conference, what we hear at that conference and what comes out of it will be something that the various teams will be reviewing and taking a look at to determine if there's anything that needs to be acted on and what the right place for action will be. But I'm not sure I can say exactly what that's going to be, but OP staff has been working very closely with OMER staff on that conference coming up.
Great. I know I'm looking forward to it, and I'm going to be participating on one of the panels next week, so should prove to be an interesting discussion, I have a feeling. Well, I want to remind people who are watching, if you have any questions for Jignasa about the policy office, please feel free to submit them in through the question function. Got one right here.
Larry, before we jump to the question, would it be okay if I just provided a couple of dates for people who might be interested in some of the upcoming comment dates for a couple of the proceedings?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
I know I always find that helpful. So as you mentioned with the transmission NOPR, the comments are already in and the reply comments are in, so that is done. But with the interconnection NOPR, comments are due October 13th and reply comments are due November 14th, just so people have those dates handy. I mentioned the modernizing markets effort that staff had issued an order directing reports that's targeted to the RTO's ISOs. The RTO ISO reports are due October 18th, and responses to those reports from any interested stakeholder is due December 17th. Just want to make sure people had some of that information handy if they needed it. So back to questions.
Great, thank you very much. That's a very helpful reminder for everybody. I know it's a lot of that stuff's on my plate right now, so we're working on it. But I do have a couple questions in here I want to turn to. First one, I don't always do this, but I'm going to go ahead and identify the asker on this because I know this will be of significance to you. It's former Commissioner Phil Moeller. He says hello, and he asks, "What's the favorite issue? What's your favorite issue that you work on?"
Thank you, Commissioner Moeller. Good to have you in the audience. I would say for me, I continue to think some of the new technologies that are coming into the market that have opportunities to participate in the market continue to be exciting, and I think they can tie on to all of the issues we're working on: improvement of transmission, improvement of markets, be it software, technology, optimization, those issues. Those continue to be exciting because I see them as ways of bringing better performance to the system while hopefully reducing costs for customers.
Actually, that's a great segue to a question I was going to ask you about anyway, which is to focus on the I in OPI innovation. You just touched on it right now. We're seeing a lot of focus on advanced technologies, particularly in the transmission area, as we're looking at an enormous build out of the grid, and how not in just in addition to additional infrastructure that's going to need to be built, but how to get more out of the infrastructure that's built and existing infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about what, if anything, OPI is looking at or focused on those types of innovation and advanced technology issues as it might pertain to transmission? Do you see the Commission taking steps towards doing maybe more of an examination of those issues, whether through a technical conference or something like that? And I think there are some proceedings, generic proceedings related to incentives related to that area. Can you talk a little bit about those types of topics and what's OPI's involvement, what's OPI's thinking on those issues?
Sure. So some of the things that the Commission has done recently, one was managing line ratings. That was taking an examination of the line ratings to see if there's opportunities to improve their performance. I know there was a range of reaction to that effort in terms of making sure that transmission owners, to the extent they had reliability concerns, those were addressed. But that's again that attempt to get more out of the existing system. The Commission over the years has put forward some thoughts on ways to incentivize or have transmission owners and operators consider using transmission. The latest has been in our transmission NOPR, where we talk about specific technologies like dynamic line rating or transmission optimization that could be potential technologies. And we also talk about that in track 2, the interconnection effort, which we call in short track 2 internally, interconnection effort as one where if there is ways to use technology to reduce the build out or use the existing build out more efficiently, use those. I think for people who have been around for the last few years, some of the challenges continue to be, how do you ensure that this technology can be integrated? Who should pay for that technology? How do you make sure that when that technology is used by a transmission owner or operator, there isn't a reliability concern? Sometimes there's also this concern about if the technology is communicating over the internet, how do you make sure that the information and the technology is cyber secure? So all of those issues continue to be very tough ones that we tackle. But what has been very helpful is to talk to people who have pilot programs or have had successes in using those technologies and then build off of that. I see us as having to push on some of those issues because they aren't easy, but there are opportunities that bring value to the customer. So it's worth thinking through those things. On the incentives front, again, we've focused on some of those technologies that are proven in the transmission track and the interconnection track. But right now, that's where our focus has been.
Well, I think just particularly in the area of advanced technologies, it highlights where there's some tension, I think, between different FERC policies and how they wind up playing out in the real world, where we're looking to advance the use of some of these technologies because they provide long-term benefits to the system, whether reduced costs down the road or greater use out of the existing system. But there are other aspects of FERC policies that emphasize advantages in the short term. So in other words, if you've got an advanced technology that may be very expensive up front, but while there's pressure on keeping costs down, initially it could wind up dissuading the use of those technologies because they're more expensive, at least in the short run. Yet they have long-term benefits that will play out, years down the road. So I'm curious, are you guys thinking about those types of issues, how to reconcile some of those perhaps potentially conflicting policies? Are those the types of things that are on the forefront or on the burner for OPI and for the Commission generally?
I'd say yes, there is, as I was saying earlier, that issue amongst other issues are the tougher ones that we haven't been able to solve, but we continue to think about it. And that's where I find conversations with stakeholders very helpful. And I know there's research out there, there's papers, there's reports out there. We take a look at them to see if there's any avenues to be able to do that. To the extent it's tied to rate recovery, we have Section 205. It has a certain set of requirements that you have to meet. And so balancing all of that continues to be something that we are thinking through. I don't have, we haven't cracked that nut yet.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to answer that today. But go ahead, I'm sorry I interrupted.
As I was talking through the different rulemakings and efforts we have, I failed to mention the dynamic line rating notice of inquiry that the Commission issued. We received comments in response to that. That's another effort to continue to look for ways to use the existing system more efficiently if possible.
Well, I just got another question that came in. It sort of follows up on what we've been talking about right now, which is they're asking how has the response been towards non-wires technologies, and do you have any use cases that you think would highlight that response to it?
So I don't have a great answer to that question right now. I do know that in several of our papers, for example, on the managing line ratings, we had provided some great examples of utilities that had been using the technology. Some of them were based in PJM. We also had put out some information that the MISO Market Monitor had provided to show the benefits of using a line rating. So those are the examples we have. In this latest set of comments we got in response to the transmission rule, we're still going through it. I haven't read those comments yet. So hopefully I will get a chance to look at what the discussion is on non-wires. My understanding is that there is some support for it, but there's also some of the concerns about what the different entities' roles are in using that technology and implementing those technologies.
Got it. Thank you. I had another question that came in. This is more kind of back towards the organizational and use of staff resources area, but it plays off of what we've been experiencing for the last couple of years, where people have been out of the office for some period of time in response to COVID and the pandemic. But now we're in a situation where people coming back in. I believe staff is back in the office to some extent for the last couple of weeks now in headquarters. And the question is, how has this changed now with people coming back into the office as opposed to working remotely? How does that affect policy discussions and the workflow within your office and the commission?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think in March 2020, when we all decided we were leaving the building and being virtual, I think there was quite a bit of anxiety of how we would do, but I would say taking a look at the commission's work, the quality of the work and the amount of work is a great way to look at. The commission has been very successful and has accomplished a lot of its priorities. On the policy front, we have done a great job of using all the communication tools we have to be able to talk to each other, continue to participate in outreach, attend conferences, work collaboratively with our peers to move forward on the range of actions. So I'd say it did not slow down. To the extent we're back, I think we've recognized that we have a range of people that work well in different environments, the people who like to be around other people. This is a chance to be in the building, interact with various people. We have several new staff we've hired. We've seen an opportunity to make them part of our office and include them in the OPI culture that's built over the years, be it just catching someone in the hallway or going to coffee with someone or taking an intern out to lunch, which we couldn't do for our last set of interns, and we feel like we all missed out on that. So those are the things that I think aren't as successful virtually, but we're trying to pick up on that as much. But the commission did reconstitute on September 12th. We do have more flexibility, so we have more people that are teleworking. So there are certain days that more of us are here than other days, but we're slowly getting back to just being able to build on the culture that's been a strong OPI culture over the years.
I think everybody's looking forward to getting back to a little bit more face-to-face interaction than we've had for the last couple of years. I got another question that came in, pivoting back to, I knew that this advanced technology topic was going to spark some interest. This one drills down a little bit more into the weeds on it, but just, do you have any comments or thoughts about the use of advanced high-capacity overhead conductors in connection with the use of advanced technologies?
I'm sorry, I don't have a comment. I know that as we've thought about the different technologies, there has been this open question about technologies that are proven versus ones that are truly advanced. in terms of figuring out which ones to foster. But again, that I don't have knowledge of that specific technology. Sorry.
Okay. Focusing a little bit more on, we talked a bit about some of the specific rulemaking proceedings that have been going on. On the one that we just got the reply comments in, the regional transmission planning and cost allocation, NOPR, question came in whether, have you had a chance to look at any of those reply comments? Do you have any general observations about those? Were there any, if you did, were there any topics that you were surprised by that came in terms of either, well, frankly, either the initial or the reply comments for that matter? And do you have any thoughts on what some of the most difficult issues are going to be to try to work through generally on that?
So I will start with, I haven't had a chance to read all of those comments yet, definitely not the reply comments. I do know that staff is working through the comments. I will probably get a chance to read through some select ones and also talk through with my team on the various comments. I think as anticipated, the issues like the right of first refusal, the state's role in cost allocation, as well as just some of the conversations about considering benefits in terms of long-range planning, evaluation of those, whether they should be required or not. Those are all of the issues that I know are pretty significant, but I would say the whole effort had very, very meaty issues in them. And so I think some of this will be after we're done reviewing the comments, sitting down, thinking through how to prioritize the issues and which ones are the ones that the commission will consider as ones that they want to take final action. Will be an ongoing process over the next few weeks. Sorry, I don't have the Cliff Note version of what's in the comments.
I can't believe you haven't gotten through all those reply comments yet, Jignasa. But no, that's perfectly understandable. Another area that's kind of like in the forefront right now, there's a lot of activity going on up on the Hill, and some of it involves issues surrounding permitting and siting and what, who has authority over what. Some of it's looking at potentially expanding the FERC authority over some of these areas. And I guess the question is if any of this does move forward with expanded authority for FERC on permitting, for instance, what kind of changes do you think would need to be made in order to accommodate that new authority if it winds up in FERC's lap in the next couple of months?
So before I answer that question, I did want to make sure I said thank you to all of your audience members that did submit comments on the transmission rule. I know it was a fair investment of time, and those are very much appreciated and will give us a full record to decide or to recommend to the commission what to do. So thank you for that. On that question, Larry, I'm gonna not get too far out in front of the chairman. I think we'll keep an eye out of what actually gets passed, but I'll use past experience when the commission has gotten new authority or has been asked to take on new issues. We assess what we can do in-house. We have had to look at what authority we have. We've had to examine our existing processes, hire staff to make sure we're implementing those. So I think similar topics will be discussed at that time, but we are watching legislation pretty closely as it develops.
Great. Well, we're getting a little bit close towards the end of the time for this session. I got a couple more questions I'd like to bounce off of you before we get through, though. And one of them is, we've talked a lot about the work that's been done, work that is currently ongoing. But we're coming close to the end of the year is around the corner. We'll be looking ahead into 2023. Looking down the road, are there any areas that you see that could wind up being particular areas of focus from a policy perspective for your office as we head into 2023?
I think for me, that's an easy answer in that we've got several ongoing efforts that I've talked about during this past 50 minutes. I think we're just going to be spending a lot of time on those issues. I'd say all of those are incredibly important, keeping us busy, keeping all of you busy. So those, I think those are longer term efforts that we will continue to work on: transmission, interconnection, market changes in light of the changing resource mix, new technologies. We also have a credit rule NOPR out there where we were looking at credit issues and a show cause order tied to that. So there's a range of issues we'll be keeping an eye on over the next year or so.
Well, good. And I kind of want to come to a close by asking you for your thoughts on, particularly in the area of policy. That's an area, as I mentioned before, people have tons of interest in. It's very impactful in terms of what happens within the industry. But you talked a lot about, or you talked a little bit earlier about the engagement, particularly external outreach that's involved with your office on these issues. For purposes of people who are watching today, if they want to engage with your office on these issues, if they want to come in for meetings with the staff or for meetings on pre-filings perhaps, what do you think is most effective? What can they do that would be most beneficial to you and your staff as you try to work through the issues? Like I said, what's been most effective? What's the greatest effort that they need to try to make in preparing for these meetings with you and your staff?
Thanks, Larry. That's a great question, one that I get to ask you all how to help me. So I would say when we have any effort ongoing that you're interested in, what's most helpful to me and my staff is talking through the issue, whether you like a direction or dislike a direction, but not stop there. Talk about, if you don't like the direction something is going in, what alternate options the commission should be considering, that staff should be looking at, your support for that, any successes you can point to. Again, if you have solutions and you are willing to share that, I find that very helpful. So that would be my ask. And we have contacts on every rulemaking that are listed on the front page of our issuances. If you're looking for a discussion or outreach, I would contact those people. My ask is the same as you would ask for me, is for that meeting. Think about the time to meet, focus on the issues that are most important to you, and let's spend our time efficiently on those issues. That would be my ask. Larry, just also going back to as the year goes on and next year, I also wanted to mention that there is the rulemaking. I mentioned the Distributed Energy Resources Rulemaking Order number 2222. Compliance filings on that effort are ongoing. We're working very closely with the Office of Energy Market Regulation that's working on that. So those, it's fine to issue a rule, but then you have to implement the rule. That requires a fair number of back and forth and compliance filings. So that also is a fair investment of time that staff puts in and will be putting in. And I'm going to just use this to also pitch. FERC has hired really excellent staff over the last few years, but we're also experiencing some of the issues. My understanding is that the industry is experiencing where there are some positions and some opportunities that are harder to fill. And to me, that's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, is we have very interesting issues, a lot of issues to work on with the energy industry. How are we going to have the right people working on those issues? So I know that's something that we all share, and that's something that I'd like to keep thinking about. But if FERC is regularly advertising for positions, so if anyone is ever interested, or you know of people interested, I recommend they think about applying.
Well, you know, I strongly endorse people working at the commission. Great experience. It was a fantastic experience for me. So I'm always trying to be a cheerleader for people to consider spending at least a few years, if not an entire career at FERC, because it's well worth it. I do have one final question I want to go through. This is not particularly necessarily a very easy one, perhaps, but there's a lot of uncertainty that we deal with, both particularly on the outside, but some of that uncertainty also affects things on the inside at the commission. Right now, every year we're going through a situation where a commissioner's term is up and waiting to see how that plays out. Right now, that person happens to be the chairman. Question is given the uncertainty around what the future may be with the chairman's situation at the commission, how is that impacting the work in your office or the work at the commission while we're all waiting to see how that winds up being resolved and plays out?
I think for us, things haven't changed. We have a chairman. He's been very clear about the initiatives he wants to accomplish. He's got commissioners that have supported several of those efforts, and we continue to work towards those. I think this goes back to the start of the conversation. I see part of policy office's role of identifying the issues that the commission should be working on a regular basis, and keep an eye on the ball because it affects all of us. And thinking through those issues in the long term is a good place to be.
Great. I see we've come to the end of our hour. It went awfully quick, Jignasa. Really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to talk to us about yourself and the work of OPI. And again, thank you for spending so much time with us today. And that concludes our presentation for today's webinar. And with that, we're going to call it a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Bye.
Bye now.